Okay guys, here we are in a mechanical room with our nice fancy desk. I'm sure many of you all have a similar type of desk when you work on something, and in this project what we're going to be doing is replacing this NAE55 with one of the SNE2200s. This is one that I've already put in that you guys may have seen in the last video. This is the one that is going to be replacing this NAE here, and I just wanted to take this video to basically show you all a step-by-step of replacing one of these. Now, of course, I have done some other videos where I talked about some of the problems and things like that we'd run into, so you might want to go back and check some of those out if you have any issues when putting one of these in. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do, that I always like to do on something like this, is go into the system and all of the devices for the particular trunk. If I can, is I like to turn them on. That way, if I have any issues, I at least have HVAC running. I have our zones on and things like that to where they will at least maintain some type of set point, and that way it just kind of helps things go a little smoother. So that's what I'm going to do here. I've got a few zones here that I'm going to go ahead and kick on, and that way we will have air running on them before I get started. It's also a good idea, if you can, pull the database, a backup recent copy of the database, to do that as well. Now we have got the NAE removed. We have the SNE mounted. I've got my network cabling pulled too close to where it will be. It was originally pulled up through the upper section there. Of course, I had to reroute it to the lower section here. Now what I'm going to do is, I have got SCT open. I'm using the SCT Pro here, and I am connected to the device using a network cable here and a simple switch. If any of you guys are looking for a switch, check the links down in the description. The other side of that switch, I've got a network connection from my laptop to that as well. I am set to DHCP enable. The way that you do that, this is something that you want to make sure of, is you want to go into your network settings in the control panels. I hit the wrong button there, so bear with me. Go into network settings right here on your computer, and where I'm connected to the switch, I have this option here, Ethernet. I go down to properties, and right here, Internet Protocol version 4, right there. Okay, see where the mouse is? I'm going to double click into that. I want to make sure that that is set to obtain IP address automatically. Okay, once I have that done, I will then go back all the way, you got to close these out, back into my SCT Pro, which is right here. There is a discovery button right down here. Okay, I'm going to hit that discovery button. It is going to bring me into this page here. At this point is where I am going to put power on the device. Now, you guys seen the lights on it just a minute ago, and it was where I was cycling power, so bear with me for just a moment as I try to get this plug installed. Alright, now I have power back on this. I have this coming up. What we will see momentarily is the IP address will populate on this screen. I'm going to go up and hit the discovery button. That's just something that I will do probably a couple of times, whether it's necessary or not. I'm not 100% certain, but it's just something that I tend to do. It should populate the IP address right in here. Now, something that I want to talk to you all about while we're waiting is, if you have a good working relationship with your IT department, which I highly recommend that you do. Your IT folks should be your friends, depending on what your organizational structure is. One thing you can do is you can have the device set up through your networking to automatically assign a particular IP address to a device. They can do a MAC reservation. That can make your life a little bit easier. You know, that way you know what address that device will be getting. That is something that can be very handy, but for the purposes of this video, I'm showing you guys how you can go to discover the address of a particular device. It will take it a few minutes to populate that IP address in this window here before we can go in to the device itself and start setting it up. So we're just going to wait a few minutes, and I'll come right back once we have our address. just to show you guys another tool that you can use for auto discovering as well. While we're waiting, I just wanted to come back and show you this. You can use Wireshark also, and what you will do, basically the same steps, is with Wireshark you will just try to start capturing the device address. You're just basically looking for network traffic. Of course, here you can kind of see that it's just my laptop broadcasting, and eventually though you will see something pop up, some type of a device or an indication that the device is trying to communicate. Okay, we do have a little bit of network activity, and I just wanted to show you all that as well, you know, because that is one tool that you can use for your system. And here we go, right here we now have an IP address that has popped in, and what this IP address here is the current IP address that is in the SNE. You can see that right there at 169. Of course, all of that will be changing, and as I had mentioned earlier, or in some of the other videos, and I'll just go ahead and mention again, you need to be friends with your IT folks. They can save you some trouble on a lot of things. They can basically, depending on your organizational structures, I'd mentioned, they can have your MAC address used to reserve the IP address. That way when you put it onto your network, it will automatically assign it a particular IP address. I wanted to show you guys this step just because I know how it is working in the field. You don't always have that luxury. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into my network settings, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this up back into network settings, because what I want to do is I want to enter that IP address. I want to go within the same subnet. Alright, go into properties. Now that I have that IP address, as you can see here, the Internet Protocol version 4, double click into it. I am now going to change this. I'm going to put in an IP address within the same range as the device. Just to show you a little more detail, as I mentioned earlier, and I've just resized the screen a little bit, this is the IP address that is currently in the device, and going into my network settings, I am changing it within the same subnet. Okay, the last three numbers here, 148, what I have entered for my laptop is 145. That is going to get me within range of being able to access this device. So I'm going to click OK again. I'm going to close, and now let's just go ahead and bring this back up. What I'm going to do now, of course, is highlight this particular device. You will see then that it gives me the options for the action tab, and I'm going to pull that up, and I am going to go to access live device. Another thing you can do once you have made the changes to your network is you can open your launcher tool and enter that address as well into your launcher tool and discover it that way. But I find it just as handy if I'm using SCT Pro just to do this. I'm going to select view live data, and what it's going to do, of course, it's going to prompt me here to update now, so we will go ahead and do that. And then of course I now have my splash screen. Once I get everything up, I will be able to log into this device. Now of course, as you all know, new devices do have a super secret password. I'm not going to put that in this video, and you will need to contact JCI for that. So that is something that you would have to do. But guys, this is the basic steps so far. Once the splash screen comes up, once I enter the password, I do have to enter a new password, and of course once we get it to that point, we will be able to move on. There's my splash screen, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. So now I have my password typed in. I'm going to hit login to see if I entered it correctly. Of course, it will take a moment, and of course it's going to give you this screen that says password has expired, so you will need to change the password of the device. You have to re-enter the old password here, as well as then enter a new password for your device. Now that I have re-entered my old password as well as the new password, you got to make sure that you follow the guidelines here. I'm going to hit OK, Once I hit OK, it should tell me whether or not I typed it correctly again, as well as whether or not my new password is a success. We have here that we have successfully changed it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go ahead, scroll down through all of the legal stuff here. I'm going to select accept. It will take it a moment, and here in just a moment we should start seeing live data. Here we go. Okay, now I want you to pay close attention, and this is something that I have brought up in other videos that I've done in this series on changing these out. The SNE sees itself as the site director. Okay, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to hit the advanced tab, and right down here what you will see, there is a place inside this device that is showing the local site director, things like that, and you will see right here, you will see that the SNE itself is thinking that it is the site director. If you are going to pair this with a server or another device that is the site director, you've got to demote this device. One way that you can demote it is in here. You will go in to this and you will basically enter the IP address for the site director as well as the repository. However, you've got to be connected to your network. It has to have access currently. You're not going to be able to do that from your laptop through the switch unless you are connected directly to your network. Okay, that's the thing about this. I've run into a little bit of a battle trying to get it to the device to work, to populate, and that is something that I could not do. Those of you all who are familiar with the NAEs, you know that it's this point where typically we would go in and enter the IP address for the server, and then once we put the NAE online, it would automatically populate with the server. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to change the name of this device, and I'm going to go ahead and get it on our network where I can push it, push the database to it. Okay, so what I will do first, I'm going to go back into my SCT. This is just something that I do. I will open the device and I will simply hit the edit button here and select that, press Control C to copy, and then hit cancel. And what that does is I'm able to get the name to be identical on this as what the device is that I'm replacing, and then that also saves just a little bit of typing as well. So I hit the edit button. I'm going to highlight all of this, delete it out. Okay, delete this out. Now I'm going to press my Control V, and there is the name of the device. When I hit save, of course it will save that. It will also, if I do a refresh, it will update it here. And now I am going to change my computer name. Okay, I'm going to hit edit. Something you can do is temporarily, and this is something that I like to do, is I want to change the IP, the DHCP enable. I like to set that to false temporarily. That way I know that that IP address is not going to change, and I don't go changing and chasing IP addresses while I am working on one of these devices. It's not 100% necessary, but depending on what you're trying to do with the device, if you're working on trying to get a system up, trying to get a a system online for whatever reason, and you have connected devices, connected controllers and stuff like that, and you don't have network available. Of course, you guys work in the construction world, you know how that is. You'll be working on these things well before you'll get the connection, your network connection. By putting that as DHCP false, I know what that IP address is going to be. I don't have to worry about chasing an IP address for whatever reason. Also, now that I have the computer name, I have that highlighted. I'm just going to press my Control V again, and I'm going to, it will automatically update that name for me. Now, when I press the save button, the device is going to want to reboot. Okay, that is normal. That is something that we all know happens, so that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. I'm going to hit save and allow it to reboot. You can see that screen here. Okay, I'm going to hit OK, and I will allow the device to reboot. Something that you've got to make sure you do inside your database, and I did another video on it, so go over and check that out. I'll try to put a card somewhere up here in the corner. Inside your database, you have got to upgrade the database to the new device. If you're replacing an older device, you've got to upgrade the particular database that you're going to be putting into it. Okay, go over, check that video out. I'll show you how to do that here. So now we're just going to let the device reboot, and once it reboots, we will be able to log back in. Just to show you, if you're using Wireshark, you're going to see something potentially like this when you are trying to look at for an IP address for a device using Wireshark. You can see there it's come up with kind of bold red or whatever, and that's just kind of an indication of the data that it's spitting out onto the network. Something you may want to do after you have changed the IP address or the name on the device is basically unplug it and just let it reboot. Sometimes it will come back up with no problem as far as populating it up after it does its own rebooting, and other than that, sometimes I have had to reboot them to get them to pop back in. So on this particular one, we're going to go ahead and just cycle power on it and let it come back online. Okay guys, just to show you the other way using the Wireshark, what I've done is taken the IP address for my device. Of course, this IP address here is the one for my laptop. This is the one for our device currently, and I've just hit the plus sign in Launcher, and now I have the IP address here, and once I entered that IP address, I just hit discover, and you can see that it has found this device. So what I can do now is that I've discovered it, I can simply save and be able to launch into it from here. Something that I wanted to point out, you'll notice that it did not populate back in this list here. The reason for that is I did not go down and change my laptop back to DHCP enable. Okay, if you don't switch it back to DHCP enable, it does not want to populate in this screen. But you did see the step. I was able to show you that as far as seeing it through the Wireshark and taking it that way to enter it in. So if you ever find yourself unable to discover it in this screen here, go back to make sure that you turn that DHCP enable back on. Okay, if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to get it to populate back into the screen. But since we did get it to where we have our, we knew what our IP address and stuff was, I can use that straight from the launcher tool and get back in it that way. Okay guys, these are just some of the steps that I wanted to show you. I know you can shorten some of this stuff up, like I had mentioned earlier. I'm just wanting to try to save you guys a little bit of work. I'm trying to just answer some questions that you may have out there. That's what the purposes of this video is. And of course, what I'm going to be doing with this particular device, I'm going to turn the DHCP enable back to true, because what I was originally going to do, and what I try to do a lot of times, is I'll get with our IT guys, our folks in our IT department, I will get the MAC address of the device to them, and they will go ahead and set it in the system for me, and they will lock my IP address for what I want it to be. This is not the IP address. We've got this in, behind a firewall. So this is just the IP address that was in the device that I used to get into the device to do what I needed to do to show you all this. So again guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this back to false. I do have my name changed on the device, my computer name, and you can see here in my screen I've got the name changed as well. And at this point, what I'm going to do is put it directly onto the LAN connection to where we can get it to the server. And at that point, I will be able to pair it with the server. Now I am logged into Metasys. I now have the SNE connected directly to our network. What you've got to do, and do not forget to do this prior to trying to pair your device. You can see here the current device is showing a red X for obvious reasons with a different MAC ID and all of that. What I've got to do here, I've got to right click, I have got to select remove from site. Okay, you've got to get rid of the old device where it was paired to the server, or the NAE. Okay, you do not want to try to bring that in. It will cause you some aggravation. Trust me, I've done it. So now what I want to do, I'm just going to show you guys what you can do. At this point, you have a couple of options. You can either download your SCT database. Now that our IP address and everything is correct, and you can either download your SCT database and use it to pair your server, or pair the device to your server, or you can pair it manually straight from the device. That is where, at this section here, you would edit. You would go in, enter the IP address for your local site director. You would enter the address for your the ADS repository. At that point, what it's going to do is going to ask you to log into your server. It will pop up, as you've seen in the other video. It will pop up with that login screen asking for the credentials to log in. For the purposes of what I'm doing, I'm just going to push it straight from our SCT database. Now we have our device connected straight to our network. I am now in SCT. I have the server, of course the database already uploaded or migrated to the new version. So now I am going to go into Tools, and I'm going to download the database. Go into Manage Archives, Download to Controller, includes security. I'm going to hit Next. Next, that is the device. We're doing that now. I'm going to get all the way to this point here, and I have got to enter my username and password. I'm not going to communicate straight through the bear with me. I'm not going to communicate straight to the site director. I'm going to actually communicate straight to this device. So at this point here, I've got to enter my login information to the device. Okay, now that I have done the login test, it comes up login ID is okay. I'm going to hit Next. This screen here, I have got to enter my username for both the site director as well as the device. Now that I have my passwords entered, I'm going to select test login. The first one is okay. And down here, I need to test that as well. Hit Next. Hit Finish. And what it's going to do now is it is going to download the database into the device. It will also pair it with the server. Okay, you can see there, initializing load. We are now downloading our database into the device. And you can see that I've still got the trunks disconnected, and I do not want to connect those until I get it all back up and running. Something that I did want to mention, just to let you all know, that I do sometimes have problems, as we all know, with this. One thing that I had was an issue downloading the database, and what I was getting was an operational error. That right there. Okay, I was not able to download the database. However, what I was able to do to overcome this, because I do know that I'm online and everything else, what I basically did was browsed directly into the device, as you've seen earlier, and then of course after I browsed into the device, what I did then was pair the device to the server, browsed directly into it, and then after I did that, it took the database. So that may be something. I know that is going to be network related for us. Some of the network security that I'm sure that we have is one of the reasons why. But now I am ready to plug my devices back in, the two trunks, and at that point I will be able to go through, test everything, make sure everything is back up and talking, and we should be good to go. But guys, I hope this video was helpful to you. Let me hear from you down in the description below if you have any questions or comments or anything. I'd love to hear from you. But guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the rest of the videos on the channel, and thanks for watching.